Notre Dame fans, welcome to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It is Sunday night, Vince, so you know what that means, man. That means we've spent all day in the film room.
Yeah, we have.
And that was not a fun thing today,
No.
no doubt. But we've talked, Vince and I have talked off and on really all day about just kind of what we're seeing today. And there's a lot to discuss. And we're going to talk some specific scheme stuff from the game today. Just so you understand what today is about, today is talking about the game. This is not about what is next. This is not about, we make some comments about kind of what's next, but that stuff's going to come this week. This is kind of what coaches do on Sundays, which is to get in the film room and say, hey, we're watching the film. We're breaking down the film. We're going to look at what we did. We're going to correct what we did, and then we'll start making some of the changes and adjustments that need to be made starting tomorrow.
Because most of the time, it's not as bad as you think, and it's not as good as you think, depending on how the game went. Most of the time,
right?
So that's why we do this. I mean, that's why we go back and we look at the film, and we want to see if what our initial thoughts were correct, or if we need to. Because, last week we had some changes of what we thought was going to happen or what we thought happened and things like that.
Right.
I don't know that we have a whole lot of changes.
If anything, Vince, last week I kind of got in the film room and you kind of broke things down, and I looked at it and I said, hey, listen, I kind of feel a little bit better about things after watching the Ohio State game. There's some opportunities there and you clean some things up and there was some good stuff that we saw. I actually came away more ticked off from this game after watching the film. Not ticked off. I mean, I'm talking about from the coaching standpoint, not from an emotional standpoint. From a coaching standpoint, this is stuff I'd be ripping my guys for, just absolutely ripping my guys for if it was kind of my team, and just stuff that's going to have to get fixed, Vince. And so we're going to go offense and then defense, and we'll talk. Because I think the defense is right now needs to get corrected. There's mistakes. There's other things like that need to get fixed. But end of the day, this is still about the offense.
Yes,
right. I mean, this is still about your defense gave up 19 points today and 21 points last week. For every decent team in the country, that's enough to win football games when you're playing.
By far.
Anyone.
By far.
I mean, anyone.
Yeah, I mean, we all predicted. I think you had 36 points or something along those lines. I had like 50. The other guys had like 40. I mean, in every one of those scenarios, it's a multi-score win, right? So, there's no reason that now should the defense have given up 21 points?
No, and there's stuff to fix, but it's correctable stuff. It's clean this up. You can't let that happen. You've got to make this play. The offense is still the problem, Vince. And at this point in time, there's a lot wrong. And I don't know if it's something, Vince, that I can look at and say, hey, make this one correction, make that one correction. Can it get fixed in a week or not? I don't know. This is about your heart and soul, a lot of this stuff. And so let's dive in first, Vince, with the offense, and let's break the offense down first.
Right.
Before we get into some of the specifics of the game, I think the biggest thing for me, the biggest frustration for me is and they kind of go it's really two things, and they kind of go hand in hand. One of the things we said about this team at times last year was even when they played bad, the compete level was there. The issue that I'm seeing with the team on offense in the last couple of games is that the compete level has not been where you need it to be. They don't battle. They don't fight as hard. There was a lack of urgency yesterday. And so those two things to me kind of go together, because I think the lack of urgency leads to just a lack of forcefulness, right? And even something as simple as like Buckner's, both of the interceptions to me showed a lack of compete and or a lack of urgency. The first interception was a lack of urgency. Now, the corner baited Buckner. But if you go back and watch the play, he kind of catches it and he just kind of, I don't say lackadaisically, but just kind of normal turn and just throws it out there.
Yep.
And it's one of those plays where even if the guy baits him, if he catches that sucker and just has what an RPO throw should be from an urgency standpoint, just catch it, flip your hips and snap that ball out there. At worst, it's getting broken up. At worst.
Right.
But because there was no sense of urgency, he allows it to turn into an interception.
He had time. Right? The defender had time. Yeah,
the second interception, Vince, was a really frustrating thing for me because if you go back and watch the play, I'm going to pull this up here. Okay. So let's, we're going to kind of have our first film view of the game. So this is sort of the first, let me get this, let me see, we're here. Okay. So here we are. So this down here. This is where the interception happened. Okay. Down here, this is Jaden Thomas. So as you can see, Tyler Buckner has the ball thrown. Okay, so you can see Buckner here. The ball, he's in his throwing motion, Vince. He's here. The ball's coming out of his hand. He throws the ball to Jaden Thomas's outside shoulder. Jaden Thomas is actually closer to the ball than the corner on this particular play. In no universe is a good wide receiver allowing that ball to get picked off right now. In no universe is he allowing that to happen. None. And so, should Buckner have thrown that ball? No, because look at that right there, folks.
I was going to say, it's wide
You know what I
open.
mean? Like, so this isn't taking the blame off of Tyler Buckner because he should not have thrown the ball there.
Correct.
You had Michael Mayer there. Pre-snap read-wise, I still feel like that was the read. He should have gone to the top. This is the top. So just so you know, when we're looking at film, this is the top right there. Right? So that's just kind of how we
It says you look at the screen. Yeah.
Right. And so, bad read by Tyler. The bad read by Tyler is then compounded by a wide receiver that just does not compete for the ball. And that was an issue for Jaden Thomas all day yesterday, Vince. It was on the blocking. There were times where his blocks were just, I mean, there's no other way to say it, but lazy. The block in the back, you're backed up at your own, 10-yard line, and the guy just beats you inside easily, and then you push him down.
You push him in the back, and he wasn't going to make the play anyway.
It's just late. It was just sloppy. It was no compete.
Right, and I didn't like his compete on that corner route. That you can say it was overthrown.
It was a wide fade, is what it was.
Okay. Yeah. You can say it was overthrown, maybe, but I just felt like he didn't get enough separation from the defender to where the throw would not have
there was no move. He just kind of ran up and around the guy.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
So there was just Braden Lindsey had some mistakes yesterday. He got ridden out of bounds. I stopped counting at 6.
Jeez.
Right? But it was bad technique with Braden. What it was not was compete. Braden battled yesterday. There were some things he needs to do a better job of. Right? He's got to play the ball better. He's got to do different things better. But I still felt like, Vince, that the compete was there. But this right here, when a receiver is like this, again, look at the arm here by Tyler Buckner. The ball is coming out. The receiver's here. A receiver that really should be playing in a place like Notre Dame knows he's got, look, the guy's on you. He's grabbing you. I have to fight for the ball. And he doesn't fight for the ball. And we saw that way too much yesterday, Vince. Way too much. And those are things that, to me, we're going to get into some missed opportunities. But when you are in situations where you're not even competing for the football, there's a much bigger problem going on your football team than just your play calling isn't where it needs to be, your execution isn't where it needs to be. Those things are things that, see, like, Vince, if it was just about play calling and execution, I'd say, folks, this can get fixed like that. But that's the issue on defense. I think the issue on defense is there's a few things involved, but it's mostly about execution, and there's some things the coaching staff needs to do a better job, which we'll talk during the week. But it's stuff that's all fixable, kind of like how special teams was in week 1. It was all fixable stuff. It wasn't lack of compete. It wasn't a lack of urgency. It was, hey, we're setting too deep, or we're not doing this, or we're trying to get too cute. I think is sort of how Marcus Freeman explained it on last week when he was talking about special teams. But with offense, Vince, it was a much bigger problem, and the problem was they didn't battle. They really didn't compete, and that's a
huge problem. That's a huge
very
problem.
troubling,
and it was across the board offensively with every position group, in my opinion. And it was because, again, and I said this last night, and I'll say it again. Did I agree with the game plan? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Whatever the game plan was, if Notre Dame goes out and executes the game plan against Marshall, you win the game, period. Right. Period. You win that game. And so the compete level wasn't where it needed to be. The execution level wasn't where it needed to be.
Right.
But again, it's kind of an effort thing at times. And that's the bigger issue for me is the effort level. You can fix execution. You can fix
Right.
execution.
Quickly.
Absolutely.
Quickly.
Absolutely. But the effort thing is what bothers me a lot.
Right. Yep. Sean sorry, just got a text from Sean. Vince, the fact is that is my biggest coaching concern. Because when you're seeing that from a lot of your team, and it wasn't everybody, but it was too much. That's a very troubling thing for me.
Yeah.
And so like I said, Buckner's interception, the offensive line plays with no urgency,
Right.
the route running. So like the receivers coming off the ball, you watch football enough and you coach football, you can tell the difference between when a guy is slow and when a guy is running slow. And there's a difference. And what that means is if a guy's slow, it's like, I don't care how hard you're like, I could go race against Usain Bolt tomorrow and I could run as hard as I can and I'm going to be freaking slow, right? No matter how hard I run. But Usain Bolt could run against me and kind of like jog and run as slow as I am. But he's not slow. He's running slow. Does that make sense? I'm trying to use an extreme analogy to get a point across here. The problems were, Vince, that they were running slow off the line. They were really choppy with their feet off the line. There was no urgency. They were running to the point of where the defender was and then just crashing into them.
Yeah.
As opposed to he's standing where I need to go. So I'm going to run through him outside shoulder. I'm going to run through his outside shoulder, force him to open his hips and then come back to the ball. What we were saying yesterday was they were just running into those guys and then turning around, and that was allowing the receivers to stay all over them. Right? That is a technical problem. It's a lack of urgency as well. The things that got to get fixed, but they just weren't coming off with any sort of. I've always said this when I coached, and I learned this from Curtis Johnson, who was the receiver coach for the Saints for a while, was the receivers coach for Miami. At the time when I was getting into coaching, it was the Reggie Wayne, Santana Moss time. And basically the whole thing is everything needs to look off the ball like a go route, right? Like you need to have the DB thinking, I'm running a go right here. Now,
absolutely,
there are always exceptions. If I'm running like a little pivot route, it doesn't look like a go route because I'm releasing inside of the snap. But then it's like, okay, make him think you're about to beat him across the field in a crossing route. And when you watch other teams run routes, that's what they do. Like they come off with purpose. And with the Notre Dame receivers yesterday, Vince, they weren't coming off with any purpose.
Right.
And that is, again, not most of them. I said Braden Lindsey's the only exception. Braden Lindsey got deep about 5 times yesterday on what should have been huge plays. And, some of the times they didn't complete them because his technique and not competing for the ball. But other times it was misses or bad reads or things like that, which we'll point to. But those are the things that I look at, Vince, and I say, boy, those things better get corrected really, really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you should.
I love the support real quick by my people. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah.
One of the things you and I talked about before the show, because obviously we chat before we do the show, and we were kind of talking about different things that we saw and, et cetera, et cetera. And you showed me a clip or you told me about it and then I found it. I can't even remember now.
Yeah. This is going to be my next point. You're about to nail it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I coached high school football. Okay. I coached high school football and I'm coaching different points than you get coached in college because a lot of the things that I'm coaching, they should know if they're in a D1 school, that should be an understood thing. Okay. There were too many times when I would break down film at the high school level where, I'd be watching the other team and you knew where the ball was going to go because the other guys weren't running hard because they knew the ball wasn't coming to them. Okay. And it was a tell. It was a tell at high school. And you could almost every week you could find one of those guys that you were playing it. Well, he's not getting the ball. He didn't come off the ball hard, et cetera, right? I never thought that I would have to see that at the college level, and I saw it yesterday.
Often.
And that's a problem.
What we're referring to is there was a particular play. They ran a 3-by-1, and there was a 1-on-1 outside. And Lorenzo Styles just runs off. He never looks back for the ball. And he stops running about 15 yards down the field. Like, just slows down. Like, he knows he's not getting the ball. So he just slows down.
Yeah.
Jaden Thomas did that multiple times yesterday. Lorenzo Styles did that multiple times yesterday. And yeah, okay, they're young receivers. Cool. All right. then fix it and don't ever let it happen again.
Correct.
And there was a couple times where it kind of looked like Buckner wanted to go there. But if you got these guys running those routes and the other team, see, here's the thing it's gonna be a problem, Vince, is teams are gonna look at that in the all 22 version, like I saw yesterday, like I saw today, and the other teams say, hey, look, on about half of their route concepts, at least, I know that there's at least two guys that are not options, and they know they're not options. And so as a defensive coordinator, it's like, okay, how do I identify who the options are on this route? And then we know we can scheme our coverages to it. Because I know on this particular play, this guy, the field outside receiver is not getting thrown a go route.
Right.
So I'm going to play him that way. And because when he releases off on a go, I know he's not an option because he doesn't even look for the ball. Doesn't even run like with any purpose whatsoever. And so those are issues, Vince, and those are things that when you look at it are beyond some of the schematic stuff we're going to talk about. These are things that are major problems for Notre Dame that have to get adjusted really, really quickly.
Yep.
Or nothing will change.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's, again, it's disappointing to me that this is what we're seeing in game 2. That stuff should have been handled in fall camp, or it should have been handled in the spring or whenever. But that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable because that's effort. That's effort. You shouldn't have to coach effort at this level. And that's disturbing to me in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And hopefully they clean it up. Hopefully they clean it up. Hopefully they see the same things that we're seeing. I don't know how you can't see it if you're the wide receivers coach, because that's what you're looking at. And you want your guys, because look, guys get open, in the passing game because everybody's doing their job.
Right.
Okay. And I know we're going to get into more about route concepts and all of those things as we move forward, but there was a lot of effort mistakes, in my opinion, and a lot of mental mistakes that should not
are unacceptable.
be made at this level from guys that, they're young, but it's not like they're just step foot on campus.
Dude, you're a college football player. I'm watching freshmen yesterday. I'm watching Kobe Prentice in the opener for Alabama, right? True freshman, not even one of the top 2 guys that were in that really good receiver class from last year. And the kid's playing with purpose. The kid's coming off the ball, making plays. It was against Utah State, but I don't care. Notre Dame was playing Marshall, right? But his compete level was there. His urgency was there. He was flying around the ball. It's not about his speed versus somebody else's speed at Notre Dame. It's, okay, you're a 4.4, I'm a 4.6, but I'm going to be 4.6 on step 1 and not come off like a 4.9. Right. That's the problem. And you're not getting separation right now because you're not running the way you need to run to get separation. Now, when they were running with purpose yesterday, they were getting separation. And we'll point to some of that stuff that were assignment mistakes or just execution mistakes. And those things can get corrected and need to get corrected. But without a sense of purpose, like if the execution yesterday was just better, Notre Dame wins. Yeah. But we're back to where we've been in the past under Brian Kelly, where, you may beat Marshall, but it's a false sense of how good you are. You just out-talented the other team. Right. And you're going to go get beat when you play somebody better. It's almost like they needed this humbling thing to realize you guys just can't go out there and keep out-talenting teams. Like you say, somebody texted me and said, hey, they would have won this game if Kelly was the coach. I don't know if you can say that. Maybe, first of all, we don't know. But number one, they almost lost to Toledo last year. And Marshall's a much better team than Toledo is. I've been saying that all summer. But here's the reality of it, Vince, is you've got to play harder and you've got to execute better if you're going to have a chance for success. Right. So let's dive into some run game stuff, Vince, because I think, to me, the run game was a lot of the same. I saw no improvement from week 1 to week 2.
Agreed.
Well, there was a little bit more compete up front, a little bit more, but not moving your feet enough, and not consistently moving it. I saw the lack of communication. We'll get to again, no sense of purpose. And I still don't understand what, like, Vince, I don't know what they're doing half the time. Like, there's literally times that I watched the Notre Dame block and I called Vince and I said, dude, I don't know what play this is.
Well, and it's funny, the fact that you and I have to go back and forth to figure out, wait, is he supposed to block this guy? And
Well,
is
it's
he
not even who they're
like
supposed to block. I don't even know what scheme they're running.
right?
And it's not effective, of course. And then and it's because like, well, why is no like they ran an inside run play, and I think it was inside zone. I couldn't tell. It didn't look like inside zone to me. And there's literally either no one was designed to account for the mic, or they just were not blocking the mic.
Yeah.
There's other times you're asking like a pulling tight end to sprint around and then get back inside to block a Mike linebacker. If that was who was
If
supposed to
that's
be.
who they're supposed to be, yeah.
So I really don't understand what they're trying to run. And the other big picture issue for me is the run game is really severely, it's just slow,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's really slow. And I'm not talking, oh, the backs aren't fast, right? It's slow developing, or just
Correct.
doesn't seem to be a sense of purpose. And the other part of it is the timing is way off. And I want to get to an example of that here in a second, Vince. And I really wish that we could show you guys
The full video.
but we can't, right? So
Hey, we'll chalk
yeah,
talk it. It's all good.
we'll do the best that we can. But here's an example of a play that I want to go over, Vince. So what Notre Dame is doing here, Vince, it looks like a counter play or a power play. And essentially what you're going to get down here is you're going to get down blocks there. Can everybody see that? Right? You're going to get down blocks there. And then the guard is going to come and kick out. And then this tight end here is going to kind of wrap. Okay. If you get a log block here, then he'll lead it outside. It's a counter play, right? So Notre Dame runs that, and that's what it's supposed to look like. And I'm going to pull up the other version of that play here in a second and show you that. Okay, so here it is from the tight copy, right? So you're going to basically get kind of down blocks here, down blocks there, and and then this is the puller, right? And he's either going to kick, right? And then this is the wrap guy, okay? He's going to come around here. Now, the problem with this play, Vince, for me is not so much that the back is backside. I don't love that. But the reality is the back either screws up or it's being coached in a way that's going to screw up the timing of the play. And on this particular play, Logan Diggs just steps to and steps down and then bounces it outside, which makes me think it might have been power O instead of counter. But either way, if it's going to be power O, it needs to come from the other side. But it looked like counter to me, the way that they were running it, because power O, it's going to be more of an aggressive kick out there. But the reason I think it's counter is because of the way it was run. But the problem is he just steps to it. So this guy right here, Vince, he just kind of flows and goes and just eats the play up and forces a bounce. Now you had a poor execution of the play, but the reality is Logan Diggs on this particular run is literally hip to hip with the puller, which I believe was Kevin Bauman, because he got there so quickly. Now, the problem with him getting there so quickly is the timing of the play is off, but you've now told the back, you've now declared to the defense where I'm going. And I'm going there before the blocks have a chance to set up. And so the linebackers and the safety at no point in time feel like they have to be threatened this direction. And so what needs to happen is he either needs to kind of step here and jab, which I don't like counter that way, to be honest with you, Vince. I don't like counter with the backside jab, because it just, to me, and the way teams defend it now, I don't love it, to be honest with you. It's not like under eye where you kind of get downhill here.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be where he's here. I think the back needed to be there and then kind of step this way and then go.
And then go back. Yeah.
And that's
but you need some sort of action the other way.
Something.
Because the whole point of a counter, as far as what you're trying to do to the defense, is the guys that aren't on the line, right? Because the guys on the line aren't paying attention to what's going on in the backfield. The linebackers in the secondary are, right?
They're reading some sort of key. They're either keying him,
some sort of key,
or they're keying the guards.
Exactly. Right.
Right.
So
this guy's probably keying the tight end. He's probably keying him.
You need something that is going to make them hesitate. That's it.
Right.
You just need them to hesitate. Whether it's a full step hesitation, whether it's just an eye, a hesitation, you need something. You need something. And there wasn't anything there, in my opinion.
Right. Here's the other part of it too, Vince. That action does two things. Number one is, to your point, it does mess with the eye discipline of the defense. That's one, and that's what Vince was explaining. But number two, the footwork serves as a timing mechanism on the play. So, for example, I'll use, since one of my former offensive linemen is on the show a lot. I'll use we ran inside zone. We were primarily an under center team,
Okay.
and we ran inside zone was our base run. Well, inside zone under center is a little bit different, and it was a open cross, then get downhill step. Right. And the reason we did it that way is because it gets into the timing aspect of it. If you just open and get downhill, then you get downhill too quickly. And what happens is you're there before the hole opens up or before the cut emerges, to the read on the cut. So you get down there too quickly. If you are late or you take a third step or you take a stutter, then you get to the hole. By the time you get downhill to the hole, it's been closed or it's been filled. Right. So the footwork has to serve as a timing mechanism on the run that allows your blocks to get set up and allows you to make sure that you're getting to your read key at the proper time for insertion, either bouncing it, cutting it back, or bouncing it outside, cutting it vertically, or cutting it back. Okay. So the timing of your insertion is going to be dependent upon your footwork and getting downhill with your footwork. Right. And so when you're getting to the line too quickly, then the blocks haven't set up, but you've now declared to the other team, this is where we're going, which is why that counter was getting sprung out the way that it was yesterday. And we saw that a lot. And so that is something that's something that can get corrected and needs to get corrected, Vince. Yeah, that part of what we saw yesterday. So, and again, what I don't know is that what Logan Diggs is being taught? Or is that Logan Diggs making a mistake? Mm-hmm. Either way, it's got to get fixed.
Either way, it's not good.
Right.
Play design, poor execution. I don't know, but it needs to be fixed.
Right.
Period.
Right. Another run game issue that we saw yesterday, there still continues to be a lot of poor communication and mistakes. Communication in the run game, linemen talk to each other all the time, and there's pre-snap and post-snap communication.
Sure.
This particular play is an outside zone play, okay? So this is going to be outside zone, and it's going to go that way. So outside zone to the offense's right, to the left of what we're looking at. This is early in the game, I believe the first series. And the communication is, hey, I have an inside technique, I have a head-up technique, I have an outside technique. We're identifying the Mike linebacker. We're letting each other know, hey, I need help or I'm covered. In inside zone, a lot of times it's covered, uncovered. Mm-hmm. So this guard is going to make some kind of signal. This guard is going to make some kind of signal to say, hey, I'm covered, or, hey, you're coming with me, or whatever the case may be. And then there's post-snap communication where you're working together in a tandem. And teams will do different things. You, me, meaning go, like go. I got this guy, right. You go,
or something like that.
That kind of thing, right?
We had one of the schools that I coached for. Our calls were condiments. You would pick a condiment, and that would tell it's whatever it and it changes mm-hmm. week to week because you don't want people to know and all these different things. But yeah, it's all about communication. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. So on this particular play, Notre Dame is running an outside zone. So based on the pre-snap read, you're going to have this tight end kind of block. This is Kevin Bauman is going to be kind of working on a block here. Okay. Now his footwork was, I thought, a little bit sloppy and lazy. He kind of works inside out, which I don't love. You always want to try to work on through the inside out, but try to get more of a push and a vertical push. What should happen here is Josh Lugg. This is Blake Fisher. This is Josh Lugg. They should be based on this personnel. So Josh Lugg is uncovered. Okay, he is an uncovered lineman. Blake Fisher is covered, and the center is covered. So in this particular look, Vince, what we think should be happening is these two should be working on some kind of combo block up to the second level.
Correct. Okay? It's a combo and climb is what we call it.
Correct. And so at the snap, Blake comes off, and I thought he stepped a little bit too wide, Vince, on this particular play, but it was a minor thing.
Yep.
And then Josh Lugg is supposed to step here and help take that over.
Correct.
Or help work on that.
And to your point, I do think he stepped a little wide because they barely brushed shoulders on his way past. And if this is supposed to be a double team, I want his shoulder on the opponent's helmet almost. Right. That way you're shoulder to shoulder with your partner, and there's no way that he's going to be able to split the two of you. Right. So I do think it was a little wide, but again, that's splitting hairs. if this is a double team, that's splitting hairs. Problem was there was no double team.
Yep. Now, here's the other part of it. Yes, he stepped too wide, but if Josh Lugg does what we think he should have done, he should have been there. So these two guys, so this is Jarrett Patterson and Zeke Curl are going to work together here for this guy and that guy. These two have that guy, and the back has that guy. That's basically how it works on an outside zone. So you're going to be stretching. It's a slow swipe play, which means you're working laterally. It's a developing play, and what you want to do here is you want to get a really good wide push here to change sort of where the read is going to happen, because you'll see at times where a back will make a cut out here, and he's cutting behind the center.
Right.
Yeah. And that's how the play is a lot of times is going to go.
And the point is, everything's supposed to go that direction, right? And it's supposed to be a one cut by the running back and go. One cut and go.
So what happens here is Blake Fisher steps outside, and he is expecting help from Josh Lugg. The problem is Josh Lugg steps, and if you watch the play from the tight copy, it's like Josh Lugg never looks at the end. He's looking upfield and I showed Vince this play. He's looking upfield the entire time. So it's like he has no thought of I'm going here, which tells me there was a pre-snap miscommunication between these two on who was working with who. Right. And if those two get this block, I mean, this play, they are lined up how this should be run. Now, absolutely. they had a like their rover fire, like their rover over here came on a fire and ends up tackling or helping to tackle Audric Estime.
Yeah, it was like their nickel or their whatever, but
right. It shouldn't have mattered, because what happens is this guy right here basically comes through and stops Audric Estime and forces him to make a vertical cut, which allows the crasher right here to help make the play. Correct. Never should have happened.
Slows him up.
Audric should be making his cut way out here is where he should be making his cut.
Right.
But you never get that push outside because the tight end didn't have a great block. But then these two guys right here, just no concept of working together on this play.
Correct.
And it's one of those things, Vince, where your first drive is going. You know, you're coming down. You've got some good movements going so far on that first drive. I mean, Notre Dame got into Marshall territory on each of their first two drives. You know, you've had a 5-yard pass and then another 5-yard pass for first down. You had just come off a play where you gain 16 yards. You go 1st and 10 because Jaden Thomas doesn't run a good route. And then you come back the next play and it's 2nd and 10. And all of a sudden, bam, -1. And you're now in 3rd and 11.
Yep. These are drive killers, man. You can't allow the defensive tackle free reign in your backfield. I mean,
especially on this play.
I mean,
especially on this play.
Yeah, every single run play, with the exception of, double wing, triple option, where you're running inside veer, okay, the tackle is accounted for, right? And the tackle wasn't accounted for. And that's not how they drew it up. And again, like you said, it goes back to communication. And we talked about this last week. I feel like a bit of a broken record at this point about the lack of communication from the offensive line. And we're like, okay, they got a week to get it better, all of these different things, because Marshall's going to bring stunts and they're going to watch the Ohio State film and they're going to do a lot of what Ohio State did. They have to be able to communicate. This is even worse, in my opinion, than what we saw last week. And I am referencing this one play, but at the same time, it shows a lack of communication, but it's also, there were no stunts. There were no twists. The guy was right in front of you, and you both ran right by him.
On this particular play.
On this particular play.
Absolutely. Yeah, he didn't like slant way inside. And, and then
he was probably more surprised than anybody else that nobody blocked him.
Hold on, nobody's blocking me.
He's like
the only other time you'll see a guy like that get not blocked is if they're running power read.
Bingo.
And he's the guy that they're reading.
And or you've got like a trap play where all of a sudden there's going to be a guy that's going to ear hole.
Tight end whams down on him. Exactly. Right.
Exactly. But that's
it. Right. This is just a failure to communicate and execute. Yes. And that stuff can be fixed relatively quickly with work and leadership and, just time together.
Sure.
But what bothers me is I don't know who's making this call, but you got a 6th-year senior there at right guard.
100%.
And he was a part of a lot of these miscues. Now, whether it's somebody else calling or whatever, but like you got to know, I guarantee you, Zach Martin, Quentin Nelson, if somebody else is responsible for making a call, they're going to see, hey, no, that ain't right. Because you can see out of the corner of your eye, that dude's inside of you. So, because like what will happen is, let's pull that play back up, Vince, because here's the thing why the communication is so important. Okay. So if this player right here, and this is why it's properly communicated. So he is clearly inside of Blake Fisher right here. Okay. Clearly inside. However, if he is lined up out here, Vince, then Josh Lugg is stepping to the call, but he is thinking now, I'm getting to the second level.
Right.
Because that guy's outside. But you still got to step to it with some sense of if this guy slants inside. So, like, what could happen in that instance, Vince, is let's say the end is out here, outside, 5 technique, outside shoulder of Blake Fisher. All right. What could happen is you could get a stunt where he crashes here and this guy comes out over top. So
Sure.
Josh still has to be aware of that guy crossing Blake's face, and now I've got to work together. But if that guy is lined up outside and stays outside, then I am going to quickly work upfield like he did on this particular play and get to that guy. So, but the other thing too is if he blocks this correctly and these guys stay on this double team and work, what ends up happening is Jarrett Patterson comes down and just crashes the mic, which is what he's supposed to do. Because what happened was this guy slanted here. And so Zeke basically takes him over and he goes away. So as soon as Jarrett sees that guy cross Zeke's face, he knows
he goes straight to the next level.
I'm gone.
Is what you're supposed to do.
And that's what he did. And he crashes the mic. If these two guys get their double team correct, what's going to end up happening is Jarrett's going to take that guy and as this guy comes and shows color, they're going to crash. They're going to take him. And now you got everybody blocked. And there's a chance for something big there.
Correct.
Right? And
instead, he barely got back to the line of scrimmage.
No, he didn't. It was a -1.
Was it a -1?
It was a -1. You went from 2nd and 10 to 3rd and 11.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
So those are just times where, like, that's where the failure to execute comes from a failure to communicate. And those are the things that we saw yesterday that proved really problematic for this football team. And those are the things that have to get fixed, Vince, in order to get better. And, I do think that we talked earlier too. Some of the things that I need to see from this football team too is we need to see the receiver position is still problematic from a fundamental standpoint.
Yes.
And I want to, and again, you can talk about, they don't have players bull. Every kid that's played yesterday at receiver, other than Matt Salerno, was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. Right now, again, those aren't end all be alls, as I've said a million times, but there's kids that can play and there's kids that are on the sidelines that can play. But this is an example of, this is how we said this all last week. Vince, I don't know if you guys talked about this on your show, but we talked about it plenty of times. Teams are going to do this right here until you make them pay for it.
Absolutely.
There is no one that can help him right there against Lorenzo Styles. No one. That is a one-on-one play. Yep. And we saw this multiple times. And so what Marshall did yesterday that I really liked, Vince, is as you can see from their alignment, especially the field, they're playing outside leverage against Notre Dame. And they did a lot of head up to outside leverage. And you can see up here, it's a little harder to see, but that's his inside foot. To me, it looks like his inside foot is kind of up on Braden Lindsey's lead foot, right? The lead foot's the one in front. That to me tells me that's head up to outside leverage is what that tells me, which means they want to funnel you back inside. Right.
Correct.
So what the Notre Dame receivers were doing on these plays is they were just stuttering and then just releasing outside, and the Marshall players were just riding them out of bounds.
Yep.
And so what Notre Dame players need to do, exactly, they need to give like a little hard jab and then work outside. And as soon as that guy like stresses outside immediately, and as soon as that guy opens up to work outside, you slip underneath them, get vertical, and then get back on top, get back on your stem, stack them, right? And we weren't seeing that. It's almost like there are times, Vince, and this is what makes me think that some of these guys weren't route options. There were times when I was coaching, I don't know if you guys did this at your places, but there were times where it was an outside, no matter what, release. Because there are times when a guy is a decoy. Sure. Right? Where you look, we are throwing this route and we need you to take the top off of this. We can't have that corner opening up, because what will happen is I got something coming across the field. And and I need you to run that corner off because we think we're getting this play action look here. We think we're going to get those linebackers down or the safety down, and we're going to run a route behind that linebacker if it's like a cover one. And so I need you to get that corner, because what could happen is if you release inside, that corner opens up and covers you inside, and all of a sudden his line of sight takes him right to that drag.
Correct.
Right, and he may see that. And so you want to get an outside only release on him, or you may be doing some other concept where you're trying to get width because you're opening up an out cut, like a quick out cut from your side. So there's all types of different things where you say, hey, look, I need you on this particular play. If they're playing up, their alignment is taking you out of the play. That's cool. But we're going to then take this guy out of the play as well with you. And sometimes it was obvious that when Braden Lynch was getting ridden out of bounds, that's what it looked like they were doing. Is he had to go outside because he needs to make sure that corner turns outside, because they've got a couple quick out cuts coming to him, and you don't want that corner sitting on those routes and driving on those routes. So not every time a receiver gets ridden out of bounds, it's, oh, gee, why did he take an outside release? Sometimes it's, hey, you got to take that outside release. But if you're an option, you have to be able to, if that guy's taking your outside away with his alignment, you've got to be able to stretch it, widen them, and then dip up inside of them, then stack them. And a quarterback's got to be able to see that. We weren't seeing that yesterday, Vince, from the Notre Dame receivers, and that's a problem for me. Right. I mean, it's a continued problem that we're seeing from this football team.
And that outside release that you were talking about, and we can use Braden Lindsey as an example. That's been the outside release move for the last 5 years,
right?
And there's no jab inside, there's no nothing, and it plays right into the hand of a DB who wants you to go outside, right, and they ride you outside, and
or cut your splits down. I mean, that's what coaches need to do, Vince. Cut your splits down.
If that's going to be your only move, yes, then cut your split down so you have more room and you're not eliminating part of the field for your quarterback to throw the football. I mean, that's the biggest problem, is when you're running tight to the sideline and the quarterback wants to throw you the ball, there's hardly any place to put that ball, right? That's the biggest problem.
Yes, agree. The other problem that was happening in the pass game, Vince, was a lack of spacing. There was a severe lack of spacing yesterday. And this right here did not happen only once. This is when the quarterback is throwing the football.
Correct.
I mean, this is the play that Tyler Buckner threw out of bounds. Braden Lindsey made a nice play on the ball, but he gets thrown up. I mean, how does this happen on fourth down?
Right.
You got two guys falling down, and another guy Jaden Thomas's route on this, he ran it like he had no clue what he was doing. Either that or he just didn't care. Yeah. Will never question Jaden Thomas whether he cares or not. I'll never question that. I have no reason to question that. So it tells me he didn't know what he was doing. And just to see this kind of stack right here, Vince, is incredibly problematic. And we saw that several times. There was a play where Lorenzo Styles caught a ball, and him and Jaden Thomas were both reaching for the ball. Do you remember that play in the second half? I think it was the fourth quarter. And it's like, why are you two standing side by side? You and I just kind of looked at each other during the game like, what the heck is going on?
Right.
Those type of things just can't keep happening, Vince. Like, you say, well, it's just game 2. Well, it was game 2 for Marshall, and it didn't happen to Marshall. So why does this keep happening to Notre Dame? And so those are just the things that, when you look at what's kind of happening in this game, Vince, those things have to get corrected.
Absolutely.
Now let's get to some of the execution mistakes. There were some execution and read mistakes as well. And I'm going to pull one up now. And these are the things where young quarterbacks have to learn. Now, I don't think we're not going to see Tyler Buckner have an opportunity for a while to learn from this. If what I'm hearing is true, right. But we're going to draw this stuff up anyway, and because it's missed opportunities. This is a play. I believe this was a fourth quarter throw. This was a third down. And again, Marshall was daring Notre Dame to beat them off the field. Now, pre-snap, Vince, they basically have a 4 verts concept called here by Notre Dame. So a 4 verts concept for any team that properly knows how to run 4 verts is going to look like this, right? It's going to kind of look like this, meaning you've got vertical releases by everybody, but everybody also has options to stop. Okay. So on this particular play, since it is a 2x2, everybody's working up a seam to outside. Now, this guy is going to release on a vertical. And if this corner bails, he's going to stop about 10 yards. And you hit him, he catches it, and he goes. This guy right here has basically an option to get vertical. And if this guy stays over top of him, then he's going to get to about 12 to 15 and just break it off on a quick option route. Same thing here with this guy and same thing here with this guy. This is the ball where Braden Lindsey goes this way and Tyler Buckner throws it out here to no one. Now, what happened with Tyler on this play, I guarantee it, Vince, is he saw the cornerback about 7-8 yards off the ball, squaring inside. He's thinking, this guy's bailing at the snap.
And I'm throwing it underneath.
Throwing it underneath. Okay, based on the pre-snap, I understand that.
Right.
And then also the safety here is playing inside of number 2. And then this safety down here is clearly got his focus here. So what that tells Tyler is I am going to the field. This is one of the few times they threw a field throw, and it's the proper read. So if this guy goes here, then Tyler knows he's looking there. Okay, and if this guy stays here, which he does, then I know I'm looking there. That's the read. Okay, so at the snap of the ball, the cornerback actually sits. Braden Lindsey properly runs right by him.
Yep.
If Tyler Buckner reads that correctly, this is a 43-yard touchdown to Braden Lindsey. An easy 43-yard touchdown.
Easy pitch and catch.
And again, mistake that a young quarterback's going to make, but it costs you, right?
For sure.
You've got to be able to get this kid. This is a pretty simple read, to be honest with you, that you need to hit, Vince. And that's one of many examples yesterday where we just saw this group that it was always something. It was a quarterback making a mistake. It was the receivers stopping. I could pull you up 5 or 6 plays yesterday on third downs where the receivers just stopped.
Yeah.
The play we're talking about earlier with Braden Lindsey or with Lorenzo Styles just kind of slowing up, never looking back for the ball. That was a third down. That was a third down where he never looks for the football, Vince.
Yeah.
And those are the type of things that we saw way too much of yesterday.
I agree. And this particular one, and I'm not even playing devil's advocate. I'm just saying these are the quote unquote mistakes that I anticipated from Tyler Buckner.
Sure.
Because he's a first year starter.
To a degree, but all verts is kind of like, day one install type.
No. I agree with you, but it doesn't surprise me that he missed a read. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like that stuff I could explain away. For sure.
But we're explaining it. And if this was the only, here's the thing. If this was the only stuff that was plaguing Notre Dame,
exactly,
I'd be okay because we can correct this stuff.
Correct.
But these type of things, here's another example of, you talk about execution and missed opportunities. There's less than 30 seconds to go in this first half.
Yeah. Notre
Dame's down 9-7, and Braden Lindsey has flat out torched the Marshall defense. This should have been 6.
Yes.
This should have been a 73-yard touchdown, and Tyler just missed them.
Yeah.
Those are the mistakes you can't make. Tyler did everything right up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
He let the route develop. He kept his eyes downfield. He climbed the pocket, and he just missed.
Yeah.
Got to hit this throw.
Absolutely.
Again, we can look at this stuff and say, hey, this gets fixed with experience, but the reality is, Vince, I'm sorry, this is the one that I had a hard time with, because I don't care how you're a freshman or a senior or anything in between. When a guy is this wide open, you can't miss.
Well, just like we can't
miss.
You remember last year when Cone missed a wide open Braden Lindsey in the end zone? You remember that one? It was early on in the season, and it was a go route, and he overthrew him. Lindsey dropped it. Lindsey dropped it.
Against Toledo or Purdue, I forget which one it was. Yeah.
Lindsey dropped it, is what it was.
Against Toledo.
So it wasn't on the quarterback, but at the same time, you gotta make that play.
Got to make those plays
wide open. You've got to make that play.
Lindsey's open. You've got to make that play, and those are some of the missed opportunities, Vince, that we saw from the offense yesterday, where you're just like, this stuff can't happen, man. You can't have these kind of misses and these kind of mistakes. And so, the encouraging thing to a degree is that stuff can get cleaned up, but you can't have, There were so many things yesterday, Vince, that you look at and say, woulda, coulda, shouldas. But what bothers me is that what was happening was so much of this was just about not competing, not having urgency. Those kind of things that I just showed, the mistakes by Tyler. There were other mistakes where, guys need to make catches and they don't make the catches and they're not executing a blocking. All that kind of stuff can get corrected. But when the game is on the line and you get picked off because your receiver doesn't fight for the football on a ball that, he shouldn't have thrown it there. It was a read mistake by Tyler. But that ball shouldn't get picked off ever. Ever.
Right.
Ever. Like, I would not play a kid who got picked off in that situation at receiver. I would not play him again. Like that next week. No. Till you show me you really want to be out here and compete, I'm not playing you.
Right.
Like, because the game was on the line and that cornerback from freaking Marshall wanted the ball more than you did.
Yep.
You know who wants to compete for that ball? Every receiver sitting on the bench that's just waiting on his opportunity yesterday. You're telling me Tobias Merriweather can't get outfought for a football? Of course he can. You know what I mean? So you can't tell me, well, this guy knows what he's doing, because I did not see that from Jaden Thomas yesterday. I'm sorry I'm picking on Jaden, but he had a really bad game yesterday.
Yeah, he did.
Because I saw no urgency from him. I saw very little compete from him.
Man. He had opportunities. He did.
And I need to see that. And so when that's a mistake, when your quarterback's getting picked off because he gets baited into a throw, but even getting baited, if he has a sense of urgency, that's a coaching problem just as much as it's a player problem, because we saw way too much yesterday. And those type of things when those things are happening, Vince, it's a bigger problem than just you got a young quarterback that's got to learn from those mistakes. Number one, he's made that mistake before. Did you watch the Virginia Tech game last year? Right? You shouldn't be making that mistake again. But if you just play with urgency, you're not making that mistake. Your ball's getting batted down. It's not getting picked off. If your receiver just wants to compete for the football, Vince, it may not be a catch, but it's certainly not a pick six and the game is over.
Right.
And that's the stuff that bothered me. When you're getting out fought by Marshall, you got a whole different problem than inexperience, because experience is not, you don't gain desire to compete from experience. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
And that's my issue that we saw yesterday, Vince.
Yeah.
Defensively, I don't know if I would say that I feel the same way about the defense. The problem from the defense was execution.
Yes.
Some concerns about not being fully aware of what they're doing. But I think the usage was a problem for me too, Vince. And the biggest thing for me is Notre Dame has a relatively undersized defensive line that they seem to be asking them to eat up space a lot.
Right.
And that is, there's a lot of times I'm seeing Jason Adamiola and Howard Cross and Jacob Lacey coming off the ball and just kind of sticking an arm in there, just trying to hold their water. And we've talked about this during the offseason. You can't ask those guys to do that because they're 265 to 285 pounds. And there was way too much of that. And when they let those guys shoot gaps, they were getting penetration. They were making plays.
Right.
And so to me, another thing is, we were watching them play yesterday, and all of a sudden they come out in these different types of looks. And it's like you've got Justin Adamiola playing big end, and then next play he's lined up at Mike, and Riley Mills is playing 3 technique, and then the next thing he's doing here. And we've heard a lot from the linebackers and now Golden talking about, I want these guys to know every position. These are flipping college kids, right? And that was kind of a concern you had at the time. It's like, I hope that they can learn something. And I think that experiment has failed. And they need to go back to Vince. And you had said this before the show when we were talking. You've got to make sure kids know one thing first before you ask them to learn 3 things.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, does their skill set offer, positive things at multiple positions? Sure.
Talent-wise, it makes sense.
Yes. And we've talked about that in the past too. When it comes to recruiting, you want to recruit guys that can play multiple positions. Positional flexibility is huge. No doubt about it. But you need to be really, really good at one position before I need you to be able to be serviceable at others. And right now, being serviceable at other positions is the ceiling. at the moment. That's not okay. That's not okay. That is not where we need to be with this defense.
Mhm.
So I think that's
Because you
part of the
do have
problem.
Maris Lufau's talented,
Right.
but we said during the offseason, this is a kid with 20 career tackles, like 20 some career tackles.
Right.
And now you're asking him to learn multiple positions. No, put him at will, let him master will, and then once he gets that down, you do something else.
Right.
And to me, they're asking these kids to do a lot more. One of the questions we asked during the week last week was, well, we're going to find out if Al Golden could put a game plan together in a week. And I didn't like the game plan.
Yeah.
They were playing Marshall, Vince, in a strange way. Like they were giving Marshall a little bit of ground to run. We talked about how we wanted to see them be aggressive. They weren't aggressive. They were giving up the inside the whole game against a quarterback with not a very strong arm. You want to make him throw the ball outside, make him throw distance, which is what Marshall did to Notre Dame.
Right.
And so those type of things you look at and say, boy, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand the game plan. I don't like that they're asking these guys to do a lot of different things, which clearly they can't do. And maybe they couldn't practice, but they can't game. So go back to letting these kids learn the one thing that they can do. Right. And so to me, defensively, the other problem was, and I don't think it was a schematic thing. I think it was an execution thing. They got out leveraged it was both all night long. And every time Marshall needed a play, they knew we can do something to get to the flats. And we're going to show you a couple examples here of what we're talking about here. This is a particular play where Marshall is simply running an RPO, right? And it's here, and they're running a bubble screen here, and it's just that. It's simple football.
Yep.
This is not a scheme problem.
It's funny that you bring.
Go ahead, Vince.
Up because remember I talked about the route recognition. We were talking about it on the phone, and this is a perfect example of that because it was just a slow recognition to what was going on.
Right.
And I'll let you kind of talk it through, and then people will see the slow recognition of this play.
Now, what happens? Two things happen here. Is this play? What you're teaching your guys is to not get beat outside. And so what happens here? This is Ramon Henderson, and he comes down and he gets blocked by this guy. And what happens is he allows that guy to get hit to his outside. And so this linebacker can't get out there to make that play. And the cornerback ends up, or the safety ends up coming from here, I believe, and making this play. But you should not get out leveraged here, Vince.
Right.
You are outside of this guy. This guy's off the ball. He needs to crash here and force that back inside, which I think, if I remember correctly, I think he kind of worked out here, then got blocked out. So the cornerback did a really good job of getting off the block. That was his mistake. But this is a thing where, and we've seen Tariq Bracy do this multiple times already this year, where a bubble screen comes and all he does is fly right through the outside shoulder of the blocker and blows the guy up and forces it back inside where his help is. Because all your help is here. This is where all your flipping help is coming from.
Not outside.
Where you don't have help is here.
All you have is a sideline out there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was one of those things where it was a mistake. But even then, because of like this, I don't know what was going on in here. But they were just there was a play where the quarterback rolls out and he just kind of jogs for like a 6-yard, 7-yard gain. Like, what is happening right now? Like, that guy just jogged for 6 yards against this Notre Dame defense. Like, what is happening right now? And or they would just kind of throw a little swing, or they would just do something to easily get the ball outside. And then the last play, and this is basically the game was on the line, Vince, was this play right here.
This is the 3rd and 9, isn't it?
So Riley Mills had just blown up the previous play. Just gets off, great block destruction, backs in space. If Riley doesn't make that play, that guy is outside. He is out the gate. Riley makes the play, and it's 3rd and 9, right? And Notre Dame is up 15-12. They've pinned – John Sott has pinned Marshall back inside their 10 again.
6-yard line is where they started this drive.
3rd and 9.
Yeah.
They ran a friggin' bootleg on 3rd and 9. And so this guy runs, he does something over here, Vince. I forget what route he ran. This guy is just going to come underneath and run a simple little slide route. It is,
and they did that
football
all day Long.
And so
Notre
what
Dame could do
happens is
nothing with it.
Maris steps down here. Now I think they're in man coverage here. Okay, because this guy here tries to chase and he's playing man coverage. This guy comes out here, and what made this play so bad, Vince, is the guy that was supposed to be covering him stopped. He bit so hard on the run action on 3rd and 9 that he stopped and went back in here, and Marist had no concept of that guy coming backside. None. And so when this ball gets thrown, when this guy gets outside, Marist and Ramon Henderson basically both stop and are peeking into the backfield. And this guy comes wide open for the easiest 3rd and 9 conversion I have ever seen in my entire life.
Yep.
And I'm being a bit hyperbolic, but it's in the conversation.
Yeah.
And this is with the game on the line. And so for all the things we've said about the defense, they've played well and they're not the reason they're losing. To a degree, that's true. But this is now the 2nd game in a row.
Correct.
2nd game in a row where you had a chance to get off the field on 3rd and 9. And if they're punting from here, at worst, you're getting the ball at your own 40-yard line with another chance to go punch it in.
Absolutely. And you're ahead at this time, right?
Right. You're winning in the 4th quarter. You have a 4th quarter lead of 15-12.
Correct. And all you have to do is get them off the field. That's it. That's all you got to do. And they couldn't do it. 94-yard drive. They go up 19-15. That's it's just not good. Again, and I said it last night, but you in 2 games in a row, one was Ohio State, one was Marshall, but you gave up 2 90+ yard drives when that could have been the turning point in the game.
Yeah.
If you get them off the field, the game is over. You win the game. And they couldn't do it. So for as well as they played or didn't play at the beginning of the game or throughout the entire game, with about 9 minutes left in the game, all you have to do is get them off the field. And we're still super critical about the game.
Sure.
And we're always, right?
But I'd much rather be super critical
after a win
of an ugly win over Marshall than an ugly loss over
because we
Marshall.
were last year over like Toledo and all of those other things, right? So you get them off the field there, you win the game. Period.
Yep.
Because I think the offense had momentum.
We think. Right? But there's still a decent amount of time left in the game at that point in time.
But the bottom line is you
could have thrown the pick 6 on the very next drive, right? But then if the pick 6 happens, it's 19-15, not 26-15.
Exactly. It's not the backbreaker and game over. So yes. Absolutely.
Those are the kind of things we saw in this game, Vince. I thought the tackling was really suspect as well. There was way too many guys looking to have knockouts.
Missed tackles written right there.
Yes. Yeah. Way too many guys looking for big hits and not enough guys looking to wrap up and tackle.
Right.
And the linebacker play to me, Vince, too, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, the linebackers looked really uncertain of themselves throughout this game, which is why I think they started just crashing and just sending them on run stunts, because then they could at least fly downhill. And when they were flying downhill on run stunts, they were relatively effective.
Sure.
But they were allowing themselves to get eat up, Vince, because I just don't think there was a lot of confidence on, where am I going? What am I doing? What am I supposed to do here? They need to.
And when you're hesitant, when you're hesitant as a linebacker, you're done.
Yeah.
You're done because you're going to accept blocks. You're going to be into blocks. You're not going to be, it's just, you can't be hesitant as a linebacker. You have to trust your eyes. You have to trust your keys, and you got to come. You got to come now. And too many times I saw linebackers running into the pile. Yeah. Running in and just. You're taking yourself out of the play at that point, because if the running back runs into the pile, you're good. You don't need to run into the pile. That doesn't do any good.
I thought Marshall's O-line did a great job of sticking on their first level combos and then coming off late, because the Notre Dame linebackers never forced them to come off those combos. And then they would kind of get off on them. And then that's where the room was opening up.
Right.
I thought they did a really bad job of getting outside leverage. They were allowing themselves to get reached way too much. And again, credit to the Marshall offensive linemen for doing a really good job of coming up and working their. I mean, they worked their feet really well, and they had 2 returning starters in their offensive line. So hey, so much for that whole experience thing. And so, and the other thing too that I really liked about what Marshall did too, Vince, is they stayed patient with their game plan. They knew they had some stuff, but they didn't waste it all early. They waited. Hey, when we need a play, that's when we're going to go to this.
Yeah, it's funny you say
But
that
there was
too.
so much just bad execution, like the double pass. That Marshall was desperate at that point in time. They
Yes.
were desperate, like because Notre Dame had been stopping them. The offense for Notre Dame was kind of getting rolling, and you have two guys, Maris Luafau and Jordan Patelho, basically stop and let the guy throw it, as opposed to pursuing. And then one guy stops, and then the other guy goes underneath, and then the corner doesn't get off the block, and that guy just kind of scoots outside. That's
Yeah.
terrible execution.
Yep.
Terrible execution. But we saw way too much of that on Saturday. Way too much of that because the secondary had covered that play up. I mean, it was covered.
That's why he didn't throw it. I mean,
right.
He made the right call, but he's like, oh, wow, I can just run the ball and get
Yep.
plenty of yards. And that's what happened. Yeah.
And that was the disappointing thing for me. When your safeties are coming downhill with more aggressive, and I'm not talking about speed, because safeties are always going to come down with more speed because they're coming for more distance. Right. But with aggressiveness, like your best blitz of the night was by a backup safety and Ramon Henderson. Now, I say that sounded very disrespectful. I mean that because there's a heavy rotation. So, I mean, the twos are – but you know what I mean? Like, he's not a starter for you, and that was your best blitz of the night. Like, that's problematic.
It was well-timed. I mean, it was a good blitz.
Yes, but we didn't see enough of that. And so, to me, I think there were some schematic things that Notre Dame didn't protect the edge a lot in this game. We said coming into the game, Marshall's going to throw the quick game a ton. Got to take it away. Yep. And Notre Dame let them have the quick game all day.
By scheme. Yes. I mean, that was their scheme.
They were giving up the inside. Plan. Now, there were some execution problems, right? Like Benjamin Morrison kind of bites on an outside move too early. Like but that was because they were being aggressive. The way they were asking them to play, it's like, you shouldn't jump on an outside move like that. You want their quarterback to throw the ball outside. And there was a lot of times like Cam Hart was getting beat inside on slant cuts. And it just was like overall the whole game, they were allowing Marshall way too much inside. That's where this quarterback is going to be successful because he doesn't have a big arm. So the fact that they didn't come in to take away the quick throws, which we talked about in multiple shows last week, is very troubling to me, Vince.
Yeah.
Very troubling.
It was obvious watching their film that was going to be their game plan.
Yes.
I mean,
take away the inside throwing lanes.
Right.
Be aggressive with your coverage scheme so you don't allow them to execute that quick game.
Right.
And make that quarterback throw it outside and then be aggressive up front by allowing – because what we also said last week is Marshall has a big offensive line. That's something we also said last week. They had like 3 guys over 310 in the starting lineup. Notre Dame has an undersized defensive line. Why are you not using your athleticism to your advantage in that matchup? Right. And that's also something that bothered me. So Marshall, the entire game, Coach Huff, the entire game, they were using their strengths against Notre Dame. Aggressive secondary. We said they had some long, rangy kids on the second and third level that could play. They used that to their advantage. They attacked with those kids downhill all night. They were the more aggressive team. Schematically.
Yeah.
Now, offensively, Notre Dame was actually pretty aggressive. They took a lot of deep shots on Saturday. They just didn't hit them. And sometimes it's because of pressure. I've never seen a quarterback take more deep shots and get hit in the face than I've seen from Tyler Buckner's first 2 games.
Yeah, all that. Yeah, no doubt.
So kudos to Marshall. They saw Notre Dame's weaknesses and said, we're going to exploit them. We're going to make them beat us with the things they don't do well. The problem I had is that Notre Dame didn't take advantage of that. And on the other side of the ball, Notre Dame did not do that to Marshall. They did not say, we're going to take away, because what Notre Dame's game plan was, we're going to take away your run game, which is the only thing we're scared of, with numbers and leverage and then the stunts. Notre Dame did not take away what Marshall does best. And that was a problem for me, Vince.
Yeah.
And so that's those are the things that we saw from breaking down the film against Marshall. It was a very frustrating watch, Vince.
Yeah, if I didn't have to do it for this wonderful show and for this wonderful job, there's no way I would have rewatched that film. But there are many times that we have, as coaches, had to go back and break down film of games where we just stunk. Yep. And you got to do it because you have to learn. That's the key. You have to learn from the film. And I'm hoping that the players, the coaches, everybody dives into this film and they learn, because sometimes you can't just go out there and show up. You have to game plan. right? And it didn't feel like the defensive game plan was geared towards stopping Marshall. It was just, hey, let's just work on some stuff and, whatever. It was very frustrating to me because the one place we gave an A to last week was the game plan defensively.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And it just didn't feel like that was the case this time around.
Yeah. Which is kind of what we wondered.
Yeah.
Is this a situation where you had all offseason to get ready for your game plan against Ohio State? But how would you do if you only had a week to prepare?
Right.
And that was the concern for me, Vince, in this regard. So we do have a couple super chats we want to get to. As we have said before, the upon further review and the post-game show are not really Q&A shows. Right. But if people give super chats, we'll read them. So we've got a couple of those we're going to bring up here today. Nick Lane with a super chat. Thank you, Nick. He said, Nick says, don't give up on Buckner, everybody. He just needs a better teacher. You guys got the best Notre Dame YouTube channel out here. Thank you, Nick, very, very much. And no, nobody should be giving up on Tyler Buckner. And I'm very frustrated by some of my friends texting me, oh, he's not the answer. I'm like, he may not be. After 2 games, though, after 2 games, come on, man. Michael S. with a super chat. Thank you, Michael. Great show. You explain the art of football extremely well. One of the reasons I watch your channel. Good work. Michael, thank you very, very much.
Appreciate that, Michael.
McKay Rippey with a super chat. Thank you very, very much for that. You see he's got the dude from Kung Fu Panda down there. Master Shifu. That's
look
beautiful.
at you.
Yep. That's one of my favorite movies to watch with my wife. We loved Kung Fu Panda.
That is hilarious.
It's very well done. Michael S. with a super chat. Michael says, do you think Marcus Freeman has the grit to be tough a la Holtz to demand the toughness and execution that's missing? I don't know the answer to that. I think so.
I think so.
But again, here's the thing about Marcus Freeman, and I haven't lost faith in Marcus Freeman, but the plan he had in place has not worked.
Right.
Let's find out if he is going to fix it or change it or not.
Correct.
And that's what we're going to learn. And so, do I think he has the grit to be tough? Yeah. Look, I've seen Marcus Freeman get fired up before. I've heard stories about Marcus Freeman getting fired up before with his players.
Yep.
I don't think that's the issue. He's a player's coach. I don't think that's a problem. I think the practices are pretty demanding. I don't think he's not out there like singing Kumbaya with guys. Like, okay, I know you saw what you saw in the video and all that kind of stuff, but that's not really what's going on. I just think the plan didn't work, and there's got to be a greater sense of accountability with certain folks.
Yep.
And I think he needs to put a little bit more of his stamp on it because at the end of the day, he's the one that's going to be held accountable.
That's correct.
Ryan Stewart, the super chat. Ryan says, I was a student assistant at Boise State years ago. Justin Wilcox is the best DC I have worked with. Cal is going to be a problem for you guys. So obviously he's coming from a fan of another team. Ryan, I don't know if you've watched our channel for very long, but no one that has watched our channel for very long is going to be surprised by your comment. We've been talking about this for a while, that Cal doesn't have a lot of talent, but Cal is a very well-coached football team defensively. Mm-hmm. We have been talking about that for a while. And, getting his Peter Sermon's son, right, has helped with their the middle of their defense. And they have one of their safeties was a guy that I had on my Daniel Scott's the guy that Jackson Sermon's the other kid's name, but Daniel Scott's was on my all-opponent team at safety. So they're a good football team. And they're a good football team. Let me rephrase. They're a good defensive football team. Make sure I'm clear. They scored 20 points on UNLV last week, which I'm not going to make fun of because I just watched Notre Dame score 15 on Marshall.
Yeah, right.
The point being, this is not going to be a battle of offensive football teams next week against Cal and Notre Dame, which means the way that the 2022 season has gone, just in college football in general, that it's going to be a 45-42 shootout. Because, like to me, the two most sure bets to make, and if you're a bettor in the last 2 weeks, was Notre Dame, the over-under on Notre Dame and Ohio State, and the over-under on Texas and Alabama. Those are, to me, the two most, and this is why I don't bet, the two most sure things were the over-unders on those games. And
I lost.
They didn't get to 40. They didn't get to 40.
Right. No,
yesterday.
I lost, man. I lost bet. Now, I mean, I don't bet a lot, but I lost bad yesterday on my Notre Dame picks, and I made it back in the NFL today. But it was not good. I took the over both times, and both times I was very, very let down.
Yep. So that to me, Vince, was problematic to me. So
no doubt
to see those. But the point is, yes, they are going to have good defense. And honestly, I would argue this is going to be the best coached defense that they will have faced so far from a fundamental standpoint, which is saying something when you consider how well the Ohio State team, but they have way better players than what Marshall has on. Well, not way better. That's disrespectful to Marshall, who I've been telling people is a good team. They have better players on defense than Marshall does for the most part. Like I said, Daniel Scott, second best safety I think Notre Dame's going to face this year of what we thought coming into the season. Jackson Sherman, really good middle linebacker. For them, 17 tackles, 10 solo tackles in the first 2 games. Cal has had 10 tackles for loss in the first 2 games. They've had 5 sacks in the first 2 games. So again, they're gonna get after it. So we're trust me, this is not a show where people will be surprised to hear that Cal's going to be well coached on defense. And then we have a super chat from C-Mac. C-Mac, thank you very, very much, Brian. If you got a 19-year-old quarterback starting 2 career games, it's an RPO QB. Why in the world is Reese taking him out of his biggest strength time and time again? Does he understand development? Look, I'm not going to comment on whether he does or doesn't understand the development, but C-Mac, this was kind of our frustration last night, right? Like, and this is what, Vince and I have been talking about this all offseason is early in the year, you've got to get Tyler comfortable.
Correct.
Doing what he can do. It means we said, hey, look, if you got to run him 20 times against Ohio State to win, then you run him 20 times against Ohio State to win. But I remember it was time we were asked what would be the first play you'd call, and I'd say, I'm doing something where I'm getting Tyler out of the pocket. Like, when has Tyler been in his best this season so far throwing the football? It's out of the pocket, finding guys open, off play action stuff.
Play action, RPO type stuff.
You're running play actions on Saturday where he's turning his back to the defense. I am not having a kid like him who's been in the shotgun his whole life running play actions where he's turning his back to the defense. And so those are the type of things that seem like I don't understand. I feel like they're trying to run 3 different offenses at once. And, they telegraph their formations a lot. Vince, I mean, when they're in certain 3-by-1s, you kind of have a pretty high probability that a pass is being called. And Marshall figured that out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Marshall figured out very quickly when Notre Dame is running it and when Notre Dame is throwing it. And it made them easier to defend. And so it's like we said, I'm having a hard time figuring out the purpose. And I said this to somebody today, in the past was Brian Van Gorder or Chip Long or Clark Lee or Mike Elko. It didn't matter who it was. If I had something I could disagree with, I could at least point to this is what they were trying to do. And I just didn't agree with it. I don't know what they're trying to do.
Right.
And that's very concerning for me. Because at least if you can identify this is what he was trying to do, I didn't like it, it didn't work, and here's why it didn't work, but I get what he was trying to do. But I really don't understand what they're trying to do. I don't understand what they're trying to accomplish with their run game. I don't understand what they're trying to accomplish formationally and all those type of things. I really don't. And that's got to get fixed, right? Yeah. So early in the year, it's got to get fixed, and you're probably going to have a new quarterback moving forward. So now I'm even more concerned because the one thing that you could rely on was when you needed a play to be made, you could use number 12's legs,
correct,
runner or thrower, and open things up. And now you don't really have that. So they're going to have to fix some stuff, C-Mac,
the offense real
quickly.
It's going to look
and
different.
They're going to have to clean some stuff up.
They're going to have to, because you're right. When they went down and scored and when the offense looked good, it was on the shoulders of Tyler Buchner and what he was able to do well. And that, again, like you mentioned, it was the most frustrating part of yesterday's game. I mean, no doubt about it. You all right?
Yeah. Joe Billick has been one of the more calm, rational posters we have. And I thought he just lost it. So all I wrote was Brian Vince, F you. And I'm like, whoa, but he meant to say if. I'm like, dude, what did we say that made you go there? I didn't know what the heck was going on. But yes, he said, if you had to make an educated guess, how bad is the extent of Tyler Buchner's injury? I just want to let people know this. That's not something I'm comfortable doing. That's not my wheelhouse, right? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical person. Every single injury I've ever been a part of as a coach was, tell me how long he's going to be out.
Right.
Okay. And that's not my business to release until we know for a fact.
We don't.
All I'm going to say is I've heard it might be a bit, and that's as much as I'm comfortable saying. So I don't want to make an educated guess. We've done that before in the past, and I didn't feel comfortable with it, and it's just not what we're going to be completely honest with you. So I understand why people want to know that. It's a big deal. I get it. I'm not mad at anybody for asking. I just want people to understand why we're just not going to comment on that. And,
but I think that's good
where we're
because
at. And there's nothing wrong with the question at all.
No, there's not, because believe me, I'm asking the same question, but we'll find out officially tomorrow at noon when Marcus Freeman has his press conference. And it's
noon,
just,
yes.
It's not, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's reckless this is Vince talking. To me, it's reckless to speculate on injuries on guys until we hear about it officially.
Right. Now, if you have a source and you want it, and it's a good source and you want to say it, other outlets will do that. That's fine. And I don't have a problem with that. That's their business. They can do that. It's not something I'm criticizing. It's just for me, it's just not something I'm comfortable with.
Right.
And that's all. Yeah, that's all. I just want to, like I said, I just want people to understand. And I'm not, like I said, not criticizing other outlets that may report on it. Everybody's got to make their own decisions. I just look at things differently as a coach and a former player about those type of things. But we'll find out tomorrow around noon. I'm sure that'll be one of the first questions that gets asked.
Oh, no doubt.
Coach Freeman tomorrow. He'll
probably say it before the question's asked, to be honest with you.
Right.
Because he always kind of gives a little opening comment.
Yep. And then tomorrow at 1 o'clock, Ryan Roberts and Sean Davis will get together, talk a little recruiting. And of course, they will talk about the games from the weekend. 6 o'clock tomorrow night, Sean and Vince are going to be back together to talk about Coach Freeman's press conference. And so we will know a lot more about Tyler Buckner's situation then. And they'll be able to talk about it a lot more. So, and then of course we'll have a lot of some people have asked me what can be done. We're going to offer some suggestions here of some things that can be fixed right away, or some things that can be focused on, or some areas that need to be targeted right away. Tomorrow I'm going to have something on the defense and something on the offense about who I think needs to play moving forward, and some changes they need to make in that regard. And so we'll dive into all that stuff here over the week. So we will obviously preview Cal. We will give Cal respect, but we're going to probably do a couple things a little differently this week in order to allow us to really focus on what some of those things need to be. And so that's what our show's going to be. So every day this Monday through Thursday, we'll have a 1 o'clock show in the afternoon. That'll be Ryan Roberts and Sean tomorrow. It'll be me and Ryan on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Vince and Sean will be together Monday and Wednesday, correct? And then Jesse will be with him Tuesday and Thursday.
That's the plan.
That's going to be our new lineup at 6 p.m. Eastern as part of the IB Nation Sports Talk. Also, we'll have shows next week from our crew at CFB Nation, right? The CFB Nation All-America podcast with Bill Bender and Bill Trocchi of Sporting News. We'll have their shows as well. They'll record Tuesday, and we'll put those up on Wednesday. So make sure you're checking CFB Nation for the content that we put up over there. So, everybody, thank you for joining us here on this wonderful Sunday night, and we appreciate all of you being here tonight. Make sure you sign up for the message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this podcast. If you're listening via podcast, please give us a 5-star review. And of course, we're going to say this week because I think that this needs to be said, but it's okay to be frustrated and upset and those type of things. But if you're a Notre Dame fan, you stay a Notre Dame fan, whether they win or lose. And we've seen some people bail and all this other kind of stuff, and it is what it is. But
see ya.
They're gonna get it turned around. We just don't know when. But I'll tell you right now, Vince, it needs to happen pretty quickly, or this thing could get real ugly real fast. Because it's going to be another 4 games before there's a team that's going to walk in the door and say, "Hey, you can just kind of beat them by rolling the ball out." They could play exactly how they played against Marshall and still beat UNLV by a couple touchdowns. They're really, really bad. But there's 4 teams before them that can beat you if you play like you did against Marshall, right? And so they got to get better, and they got to get better quickly. So there's going to be some. Let's just say, Vince, that there's going to be some pride. There needs to be some pride testing this week. And it's fine for the coaches to do it, but if this thing is going to get turned around, it needs to start with the players.
Yep.
The players need to look in the mirror and not point fingers at coaches or anybody else, but say, hey, look, what do we need to do to fix this?
Right.
And get it going. So anyway, that's it, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us. We will talk to you all again tomorrow on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.